Today we are going to look at the various programs in Google Suite. We will be exploring Gmail, Google Meet, Classroom, Google Drive, Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Forms, as well as a brief overview of the Google Calendar and Keep for notes and reminders. Some programs are for communication purposes, like Gmail and Google Meet.
Gmail is simply your email. You can navigate to the Gmail system by clicking on the waffle and selecting Gmail, or by typing in gmail.com in the address or URL bar. Email is one of the main ways that you will use to communicate with your teacher. Please remember that if you send an email to your teacher, be sure to check back a couple times during the day, as most teachers will reply promptly to your questions and you can continue with your work. You will also receive notifications in your email about messages sent to you through Google Classroom. A second way you can communicate with your teacher is through Google Meet. Google Meet is a video software program. If you don't feel comfortable being on a video with your teacher, please know that you are always welcome to hide your camera and mute your microphone. Oftentimes this is preferred by the teacher so as to not slow down the bandwidth of the communication. If you are having lagging internet at home, you may also dial in using a landline or cell phone. Google Meet will be used in one of two ways. It will either be used for office hours where you can drop in and ask some questions, or it can be used for live instruction where the teacher teaches as they would in a normal classroom environment and you can ask questions. Please do not confuse Google Meet with Google Hangouts. If you have a video meeting scheduled with your teacher, please make sure that you are using Google Meet and not Google Hangout, since those are two entirely different programs. Later in this training, we will review the various ways to join a Google Meet, including going to the appointment on the Google Meet program, clicking on an appointment in the calendar, or entering a passcode supplied by the teacher. Next up is Google Classroom. This is Google Classroom. Google Classroom is an online classroom tool where teachers can post assignments, lessons, and materials, and post questions to the class as well. If you notice, one of the first things you can do when you are on this home page is you can click and drag any of these classes so that they are in the appropriate order. So if I wanted to have second period, third period, fourth, and fifth all in order, I could do that. The other thing is, if you notice down at the bottom of each class, there's kind of a portrait with a head and a file folder as well. If you click on the portrait option, you can see a list of assignments just for that one class. If it says missing, that does mean that it is a late assignment. Going back to the home screen by clicking on the hamburger in classes, I can also see that there's a file folder in the right hand corner. So if your teacher gave you a resource that you wanted to save to that classroom folder, or if you wanted to view something that you had turned in the past, you could click on that file folder and see any of the files that you had turned in previously as well. Coming back to the main page of Google Classroom, I can click on the second period class. There's basically two halves to Google Classroom. One is the stream side, where the teacher will post the announcements and show any resources that you could use to complete it, as well as maybe a recorded lesson that you need to watch as well. On the Classwork tab, that is where all your assignments are. And you can see a topic, a brief name for the assignment, as well as the due date of when the assignment is due. One of my favorite things about Google Classroom is being able to use the to-do list, which will show you all of your assignments that need to be completed for every single subject all in one screen. We will go over how to use this later in the training so that you do not need to receive assignment or announcement notifications via email from Google Classroom. The final thing I wanted to show you on Google Classroom, if we go back to that hamburger, you can navigate to the calendar from here and it will show you the calendar for all of your classes. So obviously you have no assignments during the summer. But if I go back to the week of April 12th, you might see something that looks like this, where you have 3 assignments due for that week. I think it's really nice to have a calendar where you can click and actually go directly to the assignment. Not only can you access your calendar from Google Classroom, but you can also access your calendar directly by typing in calendar.google.com or clicking on the waffle and navigating to the calendar icon. From there, you can pull up the calendar. On the left-hand side, you can see all of your courses listed. If there was some calendar you wanted to hide, you could do that as well. So if you decided your geometry midterm exam calendar you wanted to hide, you could uncheck that. And under My Calendars, if you wanted to hide holidays, you could hide those as well. Okay, if you decided you wanted to add them back on, all you would have to do is kind of scroll down and find it and then recheck that calendar. Okay. If you have a lot of assignments on here, if you'll notice, some assignments are given a time and a date of when they are due, where other assignments are just due anytime that day. So you do want to pay attention to whether or not your assignment is entered with a time as a due date, or if it's a solid bar, that means it can be turned in anytime that day. If you have a lot of things going on in 1 week or in 1 day, you can actually click on that day and have a more zoomed in view of the day, or you can revert and change it from day to week. So that's just a couple of options you have in using your calendar. Just like the calendar in Google Classroom, you can click on that assignment and be taken directly to that assignment as well. If you are ready to complete the assignment, you can go ahead and click on the link at the bottom, and that will take you directly to Google Classroom, where you can read the detail on the assignment and complete it, attach your work, and turn it in. One of the last programs I have to show to you today is a program called Google Keep. Normally, I will use Google Keep to schedule reminders, kind of like a informal to-do list. If you notice here, I created this little baby Yoda meme that is reminding me to study for a science test on Tuesday. And I have a reminder set to go off tomorrow at 8 a.m. When you set a reminder on an item on your to-do list, it does flow through to your Google Calendar, which is a nice feature. The other way I like to think of Google Keep is it's a little bit like a vision board that you can create virtually, or you can create some study guides on here as well. So for my science test, if I am studying atmosphere layers, maybe I want to put a couple of diagrams or visuals up to help me study. So this is one here in the layers of the atmosphere, and I'm going to upload a second one. To do it, it's really easy. You click on mountains to upload, just as you do across everything else in Google. And here is my downloaded photo that I'm going to upload now into this program. So here's more about the troposphere and where weather occurs. So I'm going to call it weather troposphere. And then if I say close, it will save it in here. I could have also added a tag to this as well. So if I click here on add label, I tag it with science. And now on the side, here's my science tag. And when I click on that, it'll just show me the things that I need to study about the atmosphere. So that is a little bit like a virtual vision board. If you wanted to do some things that were more specific to goals, you could create a tag that is called vision board, and you could create a virtual vision board there as well. So we're quickly going to be talking about a few different file types that you will be using to create work. One of those file types is a Google Doc. A Google Doc is similar to Microsoft Word or Apple Pages. The second file type we have today is one called Google Slides, and as you're familiar with, that is a great program if you're trying to create a poster with a large font and a picture, or a presentation. Most of you have probably heard of a program called Apple Keynote or Microsoft PowerPoint, and those are presentation software programs as well. Finally, the third program is called Google Sheets, and Google Sheets are used primarily in school for graphs, but they can also be used for mathematical calculations as well. And that is comparable to Apple Numbers or Microsoft Excel. The last program on here, Google Forms, does not really have a comparable counterpart, but you will typically fill out a Google form if a teacher is giving you a quiz or if it's an exit ticket. Google Forms have different settings. Some can be so that you only take them once, other ones you can take a couple of times. So if you accidentally submit a form before you're done, you may need to contact your teacher if you did not finish before submitting. All of these various file types are stored in an organizer called Google Drive. Google Drive is a very easy organizer program that has a search bar that you can use to find most of your files. Some additional organizational tips will be explored in our next training. Just remember when you go to save a file, make sure you give it a name because remember, my tip is if your parents gave you a name, you can give your files a name too. This concludes our training on an introduction to Google Suite. Please take a moment to explore the different file types and creations available.